Following program are pre-recorded.
Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken, along with Eric Grabowski, former Associate Professor of Communications over at Dickinson State University. Eric, it's been a while. Thanks for coming back on.
Happy to be back, and I am going to just mention for this week, Happy Veterans Day, which is Monday of this week by the time this is out there, and Happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans in any capacity that they served.
All right, I want to start in with Dickinson State University. Of course, Veterans Day was Monday, and everybody, I hope you had an opportunity to thank a veteran. You know what? You don't need a day to do that. You can do that at any time. I do want to start with Dickinson State University because we haven't had an update for a while, and they've had some interesting things going on. Interim president, presidential search, and a little backstory on the history of this. This goes back to... Well, I'm going to ask your opinion because I don't think it was completely in good faith, some of the negotiation with the nursing program. And the history of DSU goes back a little bit further than that, but I think that was kind of the trigger point, wasn't it?
It was. It really was the culmination of almost everything since about 2020. And we've covered so much on this program, and we covered this summer pretty much in the lead up to the fallout and the fallout itself. So, yes, in my view, and I always say my well-informed view, that the Dickinson State University administration at the time and the Chancellor, Hagerott, who is pretty much a lame duck, did not adequately deal with that nursing faculty situation, and things could have ended much differently than it did. So they were left with a major gap that basically Mayville State University and DSU have had to pull things together in terms of maintaining some semblance of a nursing program, and then some discussion of looking toward the future, and we can talk more about what that may look like. But basically what has happened, it was the intention of the Chancellor and the board by the end of September to have in place an interim president at DSU, and of course before then Kai Orton, the DSU Heritage Foundation head, was put in as acting president. However, North Dakota Monitor reported on this, and that basically the state board decided, and aspects of this were an executive session, so we don't know every detail, but they basically came out of executive session and decided to name Ty as the ongoing acting president, and that has continued. It's going to have to be on a month-to-month basis. And they punted. They did not name an interim president, and so then they moved to a plan to move forward on the search. We could talk more about what that looks like. So that's where we are now. The nursing situation is challenging from different things we hear publicly and sort of in different loops. There are opportunities in the future for growth and regrowth. That depends on the quality of DSU leadership, but there's no guarantees, as I've said before.
All right, I want to back up because there's a lot to unpack there. First and foremost, we are at such a crisis and shortage when it comes to healthcare providers. That's why the Dickinson State University story with the nursing program is as big a story as it is. We need nurses. We need a lot of nurses. How's that program working for DSU students? Are they getting a lot of that education online? Are they getting or having to travel to Mayville State? What is that program currently looking like for those students?
So my understanding of it is right now aspects of it are going as planned, as best as possible in terms of basically at a faculty administration level, it being governed by two faculty from Mayville in cooperation with, DSU administration. And then in terms of what is available to students either locally in terms of, adjunct faculty, and then online learning that may loop back to Mayville or elsewhere. So there's a gap at DSU in terms of having enough full-time faculty, and they may have hired a few full-time faculty on a now basis to handle certain things. But there are gaps. Again, there are challenges for the students that were in the programs that have decided to stay. My understanding is they're getting what they can to move forward in their programs, while then DSU now is navigating what the future is going to look like in terms of nursing programming at DSU.
Okay, I want to come back a little bit to other programs as well, because Dickinson seems to have had struggles over the last several decades of putting all the pieces together in a way moving forward, because there's been little, I'll call them kerfuffles. There's been little hiccups and bumps in the road that have been part administration, part past presidents. Just everything's not been on the same page. There's been a disconnect. Is that what this delay with trying to find the right president may be? Because putting somebody in place that's been part of the establishment to a certain degree, I don't know is the long-term future for fixing some of the other ills at the institution, because that's what the long-term goal should be, is for the best outcome of the students, fixing the integral problems within the institution. Are you getting a sense that that's what they're trying to focus on, is making sure they have the right president for the right fit to make some changes? And I'll throw back to Dr. Jensen, which there weren't problems at Bismarck State College, but a new vision going forward for North Dakota's Polytechnic. That's what Dr. Jensen brought in. Is that kind of what they're looking for in a long-term solution as leadership for Dickinson State?
My opinion, and again, keep in mind, we don't know everything that was discussed in the September executive session, but my opinion is they probably punted on the interim president decision, because they probably felt that the candidates in the poll, which included one internal, what I'd call regime candidate from DSU, and then 3 external candidates, probably weren't fitting the bill for what they thought at the time was the best path forward. So it was a comfortable choice with Ty. And in terms of calming and sort of short-term direction, Ty can probably be okay along those lines. And then now that they pivoted to a more expedited view of that presidential search, one definitely gets the sense that there is a possibility of calibrating or recalibrating direction. And they better, because as I tell people about any program, in my view, that whether people are talking about the future of the nursing program or any program at DSU, the board and the chancellor of the NDUS are going to have to get serious about, again, here I go again, leadership matters. What are they going to put in place? And it's not just the president. It's what the next president aligns in terms of other administrators at DSU, right? What's going to be the future direction? There's a lot on the Dickinson State website. You can contact them, dickinsonstate.edu. They've started to post about the scope and nature of the presidential search in cooperation, of course, with the NDUS and State Board.
Eric, we're up against the break.
Input.
Eric, we're up against the break. I want to come back and continue that in the bigger picture with the State Board of Higher Education as well. This is Talk of the Town. We're talking with Eric Grabowski, former Associate Professor of Communications at Dickinson State University on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk. Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken, along with Eric Grabowski, DSU former Associate Professor of Communications. We're talking about the state of Dickinson State University and what that looks, bigger picture. I want to step back a little bit and look bigger picture, because I think there's an opportunity. You know, Ty is currently the not interim president, but they're going through the search process. But a lot of this, for me, comes back to higher ed and some vacancies on the board, the status of Chancellor Hagerott. What I think there's some one foot in front of the other that needs to take place before DSU can get straightened out. And I think that is what, under a new governor's administration, Governor Kelly Armstrong elect, what higher ed is going to look like in North Dakota. And a new chancellor, some new members on the board. I think that needs to be figured out first before we can move on to, addressing Dickinson State University or any of the other institutions of higher education in North Dakota. But I think that piece needs to happen first. And that kind of puts DSU in a holding pattern, to me, at least from what I look at the outside looking in, is higher ed needs to be addressed first.
I don't disagree in terms of how we know the political levers work in North Dakota. However, the challenging part of that for the wonderful people of southwestern North Dakota is there's a real, maybe half-solved, maybe not half-solved crisis going on in Dickinson. So, yes, let's hope, and I'm very hopeful with Governor-elect Armstrong that there may be some breaths of fresh air. But on the other hand, we know there are some challenges both locally in southwestern North Dakota and statewide. And yes, again, leadership matters. That goes to the not just DSU, but that's to the system and board as a whole too. So I'm hoping in 2025 that there's going to be some renewed vigor in getting people to the table in conversations, as some of my colleagues would encourage in good faith, and former colleagues. And the tenure discussion, the tenure ad hoc committee, the board, and again, North Dakota Monitor has done some good reporting on this, that by March, the board is going to get a deadline going for institutions to come up with plans for post-tenure review. Obviously, that was prompted by HB 1446. We don't have to relive all that. But I hope as those sorts of discussions happen, that those aren't just covering mechanisms for other agendas and pushing back against pushback, all the stuff we've talked about. It's going to be a real leadership challenge going forward.
Okay, and I wasn't even thinking about the tenure discussion because that's sitting on the table right now, and that's kind of in a little bit of a pause.
Yep.
You've got that committee going forward, but a lot of that's going to come back to what's the state of the higher education board in North Dakota. What are some of the other things on the table? Because we've had this discussion for a long time about, there's the haves and have-nots, there's UND and NDSU, and there's everybody else. And we've got, depending on who you talk to, either too many or not enough institutions of higher education in North Dakota. I think the board is at a crossroads right now of reinventing, or at least having to look at reinventing what the landscape of higher education in North Dakota looks like. Now, at BSC, and kudos to President Jensen in reimagining a new path for BSC, and I was the mayor at the time and kind of walked through a lot of that with him legislatively and what that looked like, going, hey, we need to carve out our own niche here and go our own direction. And BSC has done a great job getting on that road. Is that, and that was fraught with a lot of roadblocks because that's not the way we've always done it. What do you see the biggest issues with the Board of Higher Education, or that reinvention of the State Board of Higher Education, looking like? The tenure is one big piece. The number of higher ed institutions is another. The missions of those institutions are another. I think the two 800-pound gorillas in the room, UND and NDSU, they're going to do what they do. But as far as all these other institutions of higher learning in North Dakota, a little insight, Eric, on what you think the struggles or the issues that are going to have to be addressed with a new board of higher education, a new chancellor, some new members, a new administration. What I'm asking you to put on your Karnak hat and do a little prognostication.
So let's start with the preliminary to that. Let's go back to our June conversation. What I don't know, and I'll try to assess a little bit better as we get close to the legislative session, with all the DSU hype and some of the other, to the extent that had board and NDUS level impact, I don't know what has happened to that wish list that we discussed in the summer once or twice. And I also don't know, for instance, remember the whole Train ND discussion, was there going to be an expansion into more quadrants or more segments, and would Dickinson be part of that? So what we need to assess going into the session is with the current sort of political leadership dynamic, how much has that shifted in the last 3 or 4 months? That's number one. Number two, going into the new session and then into a phase where we will have a new board, and then, of course, still a lamed-up chancellor for a bit. How are they going to navigate that transition? Because vision is the issue, right? So there has to be everyone at the table assessing, thinking about what are our human and other resources in North Dakota that are going to enable us as resident citizens of North Dakota to have the best education possible. So, you know me, I'm always saying get back to the basics while at the same time being attentive to workforce. So again, let's encourage them to what we talked about, back in June, a more locally driven focus on workforce. Yes? Things where it can be not always so top down, but maybe ground up in collaboration then with leadership to think, what are those workforce needs regionally that we can support through some of the traditional programs and then innovate along the way? That's clearly what BSC is doing. They're on the move, right? Yeah, university and college PR sometimes is a little bit of flam, and hype, but in BSC situation, they're doing real things and they're rightly publicizing them.
We're talking with Eric Grabowski, a former associate professor of communications at Dickinson State University. I want to come back to that local workforce piece, because if you're going to talk about that, then you're also having to roll in DPI and the CTEs and what those look like as a precursor to the workforce issues with education. So I want to come back to that when we come back after the break. I'm Steve Bach, and this is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Without apology, The Regular Joe Show with Joe Gigante. Weekday evenings at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app. Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken, along with Eric Grabowski, Associate Professor of Communications, formerly at Dickinson State University. And we're talking about DSU, what the future of the Board of Higher Education, the Chancellor's Office, all that looks like, and the future of education in North Dakota. Last segment, you brought up localized workforce and addressing that, and that's probably the future role of the School of Science down in Wahpeton, BSC with the Polytechnic Mission, Williston, because you mentioned the Train ND, and that all lends itself to what's going on with DPI as well, and that is the CTEs, the career academies that we have. That model started here in Bismarck. Are we looking at higher ed and DPI having to be on the same page for some of these workforce issues? You take the foundation for an education in higher ed at the high school level. I don't think that model's completely fleshed out yet. And then you throw in the Train ND. It's like there's three legs to this stool, Eric, and they're not all on the same page yet. But we need to get there
right.
if you're going to talk about local or localized workforce development.
Yeah, and this is a good time actually to be ringing the bell for this as we get closer to the legislative session, because not an experienced politician, not a lawyer, but I've lived here long enough to see that there are political pieces that would need to be put into place to get people collaborating and cooperating to do that localist approach that would be, again, driven by local regional needs and, of course, facilitated by higher ed leadership and so forth. So we would definitely need to get the constituents and players in place. So this may be something that in the legislative session that may need to have some legislative guidance and funding to do it right, exploratory or whatever. And now's the time to talk about it, maybe also with Governor-elect Armstrong on the way, because I think this is going to be, instead of just people getting notions on what needs to be done, the next fad, it really assesses and evaluates at a local level what are those workforce needs. As we've talked about before, there are certain things that are always going to be on the table, like nursing or whatnot, but there may be other things that are different in the southwest part of the state or eastern Montana or northwest South Dakota versus on the eastern side of the state where, the other institutions could serve other roles for that region. So I think now is the time to initiate that conversation, and then that will free up opportunities for higher ed to really think about getting back to basics in the college and university programming that's always going to be important.
One other layer I want to throw on this, too, from a reinvention of, or I don't want to call it repurposing, but just a revisioning of what higher ed looks like in North Dakota, because we have two predominant research institutions in NDSU and UND. They're tasked with the research side. They go out and generate revenue through some of the work that their professors do, and they have programs associated with that, and that's a great role for them.
Yeah.
If you were taking some of the things off the table or off of their plate, because, I take a look at UND. It's, why is there education there? Why are we training teachers there? That would be a great role at Mayville. Or some of the things that are at NDSU. It's like, okay, take some of those things off the plate. Would that open up other avenues for bringing research dollars into the state?
Could, and I'll mention the other side of that coin, too. There have been, sometimes formally, sometimes informally, research collaborations that happen where maybe there are some faculty at NDSU or UND, and maybe at the 4 years, or even on occasion the 2 years, they might know some folks through past schooling or conferences that participate with them, and sometimes that gets more formalized through more groups of faculty doing grants. That happens in the sciences for sure, but in other areas. And then, yes, on the teaching side, there may be things that are more appropriate for the medium-sized 4 years and the 2 years to be handling that maybe shouldn't. And I don't want to speak certainly for UND or NDSU, but certainly something they should evaluate. There are some things that could be shifted elsewhere.
All right, so when you're looking at, I'm going to put you on the spot right here. Do you think, because we've got, 13 institutions of higher education in the state?
So we have 11 state institutions, then 3 private schools, right?
3, yes. Are they all warranted? Do we need them all?
So I'm on the spot here. I'm going to say the best I'm going to say on that is if we assess if there's a need there's probably some things we're doing too much of.
Because they cost a lot of money.
We're not doing enough of.
They cost a lot of money.
And so as we talked about, I think it was in June, if we're going to scale down, and I'm not going to pick a number, I just would want to make sure that we have vigorous local conversations that say, okay, and as you mentioned, we can't just pull the rug out of an area. We have to think about the ways in which we may keep something going in an area versus a lot to make sure that area's economic growth continues. And if we make those tough choices at some point collectively in the next 5-10 years, that maybe we could find some other ways to keep that education going.
Eric, as far as the Board of Higher Education, some of the other issues, is there anything else that you see on the horizon that needs to be tackled or needs to be addressed when it comes to a new chancellor, new members on the board, anything else that they need to look at right now? Yes.
And again, to me, this is connected to vision. I also don't want to say that this has only been a problem with Chancellor Hagerott, so I don't want to seem like I'm singling him out. But my observation living here now for just over 14, working for the system for just over 14 years and living here longer is, or just under 14 years working, is to say that we have to find a way in North Dakota, and I'm sure this is a problem in other states too, is to respect the proper political dynamics that the Constitution and the people have asked for higher ed. But we have to put in or follow our checks and balances to make sure that influence peddling and problematic political influence and allegations of targeting and those sorts of things aren't in the mix, because that has not been helpful. As you know, it's no secret that I thought and with good reason, the whole tenure thing, and we've talked about this, was more about silencing people who are raising real governance concerns versus authentic tenure reform.
We're talking with Eric Obrowski, former associate professor of communications at Dickinson State University. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk. Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken, along with Eric Grabowski, former Associate Professor of Communications at Dickinson State University. Just wrapping up on Dickinson State University and the state of higher education here in North Dakota. What's your final words?
I encourage the public to get interested in what's happening at DSU. The Dickinson Press has done some good reporting, and of course the dickinsonstate.edu. Look at the timeline. They're going to be gathering public commentary input, which is important. So from the nursing situation backward, there's a lot to think about, but as many would rightly encourage, let's have a forward focus too. So if folks have thoughts and concerns and questions about the direction of DSU, get involved in what's happening locally at Dickinson State University.
I want to touch on one other topic, or actually two other topics. So Dunseith Gate, in those that may not be familiar with it, pertains to another commerce debacle and the selling of some property. And there was a lot in the national media that came out about this, and some local people jumped on it early because they thought, well, there's a national story here. Come to find out, there's not as big a story because there's a lot more to it. What is your take on what's going on up in Dunseith, North Dakota?
Well, it obviously caught a lot of folks' interest, including mine, and as you rightly indicate, there's been a lot of chatter about it. As usual, I favor Dustin Goverlow's approach. Do the research, get the records, and as he's been very public about getting open records from Commerce. Don't rush any judgment. Sort through the evidence, and then take the time necessary to assess what's really happened. So whether it is just bureaucratic mishaps or something worse, time will tell. Again, North Dakota Watchdog update, research from Dustin.
One of the things with it is, because you mentioned Commerce, and I think there's going to be, or should be, a leveling of the Commerce Department, whether it's a reset, scaling back. I'm looking at the dollars that have flowed out of the state of North Dakota through the Commerce Department, and I'm really trying to find a good positive project. They have been spending so much taxpayer dollars at the behest of Governor Doug Burgum and funneling money out of the state, because that's where I always bump heads with Burgum on his economic development. Is his idea is, well, we created a few jobs, but you're funneling money out of the state of North Dakota. You're not bringing institutional wealth into North Dakota. And I've got a problem with that from an economic development perspective. How much of this do you think is going to go back to Commerce and Governor Burgum on, another failed project?
Let me tell you this. If I were in the legislature, I would be ringing the bell to set up, and maybe some people have this idea already. I haven't looked into this, but I would be definitely setting up some sort of legislative committee or post-session review or something to assure the citizens of this great state that their tax money and their other resources that are going to Commerce are setting up a model where it's outside in, not inside out. Because the job of a state-level Commerce, of course, you partner sometimes with things outside your state. That's a given. But their job is to cultivate economic development properly, ethically, legally within North Dakota, for North Dakota. Yeah. And that would be like a key issue for me.
Well, in conversations with our governor-elect, I'm hoping that there will be an overhaul, if not a complete dismantling of the Commerce Department, at least in its current iteration, and how that plays out to taxpayer dollars in North Dakota, because I'm just not seeing the benefit within the state. I'm seeing plenty of benefit outside of the state, but just not a lot of benefit in the state. I want to move on to one other story real quickly while we got you on the phone, something that people around the Dickinson area have been following. Keith Schmidt, missing person.
Yeah, so I did an article on a freelance basis for the Dickinson Press in September, What Happened to Keith Schmidt. I've encouraged folks to check it out. It is open access because it's a currently active case. And Keith William Schmidt went missing on May 20th, 2024 in Dickinson, last seen then on a neighborhood camera. And so the case is still open. Still, Keith has not been found, or remains haven't been found. So read the story. There's a lot of detail there. This is certainly as they say, a without a trace sort of situation as of now. There's some things that are known. There's a lot that's not known. I will say that from the article, a family member had asked that, especially during the hunting seasons, for folks to be on the lookout. And recently, on a Facebook post, the Dickinson PD has reiterated that. So as hunters are out there, wherever they are, or whoever's hearing this, please do that. In that article, there are some additional pictures and what had been made public before. Obviously, at this point, if it was foul play or if it was suicide, the family wants closure. But there is that possibility. We hope that for whatever reason, Keith might be out there somewhere on the move, might be in need of help. So we're just asking folks, hunters, not hunters, wherever, please be on the lookout. Again, the article is What Happened to Keith Schmidt, Dickinson Press.
So this is an open case. What are there any lines of investigation that law enforcement's currently following? Do they have any leads on anything that's taken place, or do they have any theories set up, or is it just kind of a big unknown right now?
So seemingly unknown. Now, I will say, especially because, the possibility that foul play could have been involved, understandably, they're guarded with what they're saying publicly to protect the current investigation. So they have gotten a lot of leads, as they've said. They've continued to sort through them. They've, gone through, neighborhood cameras and talked to various folks and been collaborating with contacts and family members clearly. So they're not saying a lot. I can tell you just through some of the reporting in the article and some folks that have gone on the record and some background sources, there definitely was that period of time leading up to May 20th where, and again, I outlined it in the article, where aspects of Keith's business and communication habits began to shift. So there was something going awry at that point, and seemingly the law enforcement would be looking into that, and hopefully from that period of time and beyond, assessing these various leads and tips and thoughts that they've been getting.
If people want to read that
now, it's a big unknown.
If people want to read that article, where do they find that?
It's the DickinsonPress.com, and it is just, what happened to Keith Schmidt. Still open access, has been shared a lot, and that's not about me, that's about Keith, as well as those Dickinson PD posts at their Facebook page that about, those updates on Keith.
And if you have any information, contact the Dickinson Police Department. Eric, always...
They can contact the Dickinson Police Department, 701-456-7759. Again, 701-456-7759.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Eric, you have a great day.
Thank you, sir. I look forward to coming back again.
Eric Grabowski, former Associate Professor of Communications at Dickinson State University. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Talk of the Town, weekday mornings starting at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app. The Talk lineup is on Super Talk 1270. Check out the program schedule at supertalk1270.com and on the free Super Talk 1270 app.
Portions of the following program are pre-recorded.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Our current guest is musician Matthew Nelson, one half of the famous Nelson twin sons of rock and roll legend Ricky Nelson and grandson of entertainment icons Ozzie and Harriet Nelson. Matthew and his brother Gunnar perform as the band Nelson. When Matthew and Gunnar first hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart with Can't Live Without Your Love and Affection, which they wrote and performed, it landed them into the Guinness Book of World Record as the only family in entertainment history with 3 generations of #1 hitmakers. Thank you for joining us, Matthew.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being on the phone with you.
The album After the Rain. Now, if my memory serves me correctly, The release of that album and the success was at the time when grunge and Seattle music started to emerge on the scene. Did that genre impact your music or your album or your style at all?
Well, I think that genre actually, it was the largest paradigm shift in music history. It affected everybody. Absolutely. Gunnar and I had, we were kind of the bookends on the whole what we call confidence rock era. You know, we had hard rock, but pop hits that were on pop radio. And ironically enough, Nirvana, which spearheaded that entire grunge movement, was signed to the offshoot label of Geffen we were signed to. So not only did it close the door on us in a lot of ways, just with musical taste in general, but at our own record label. So we had to get smart real quick, and it was a pretty rough road. We spent a lot of time overseas and reinventing ourselves, and just out of kind of the desperation of the moment, we started one of the first independent rock music labels called Stone Canyon Records, which is what we've been releasing records on ever since. And it's kept us working and, more importantly, servicing our fans through the years and the changes. And here we are 20 years later, and it's not so unhip to be us anymore. It's kind of come around full circle, and kids are getting into guitar music with Rock Band and things like that. And, you know, people that were fans of ours from 20 years ago have kids that they're bringing to the show. So we're having a really great time. And, you know, we haven't stopped making records. It's not like we stopped recording in 20 years ago. But
now, I don't know how intimate you were growing up with your father's music career. You and your brother have gone through 20 years minimum of a career. Could you explain to me, as somebody from an independent label, what your opinion is on what's happened from when you started understanding the business of music up till the current moment? Because we've gone through social networking, we've gone through internet, we've gone through venue changes of profit sharing, etc. Maybe if you could comment a few words on that.
Well, everything has changed. The one thing that stays constant is, I think, something that's real truth is in our business, it really comes down to a hit song. It's a song-oriented business above anything. There's so many differences from when we started and now I can't even. It would take us hours. I mean, something as simple as when we used to send out a letter to our fan club, it cost us $35,000 in postage for every mailing. And now it's as easy as hitting a keystroke on a computer, and it's instant. So that kind of, that's a real asset to people like us, especially that are doing it independently. And for music fans in general, what it does, though, unfortunately, is there's a trade-off. You know, kids nowadays tend to not pay for the music they're listening to. So music has really become a commercial for the band, and you go out and you see them play live.
I agree with that, by the way. I really do.
Yeah, and one thing that's good for us, I mean, the one bad thing, well, we have to go there. The good thing for us is we love traveling, and more importantly, we're really capable of playing live. We love to play live. That's how we had to prove ourselves before. We never really we were almost kind of, because we were sons of, we always felt that we were almost guilty until proven innocent. We couldn't learn on the job, if you will. We started playing clubs at a very young age. And so for us, we haven't really changed our path, but the business has definitely changed around us.
As you were growing up, you were the son of famous Ricky Nelson and grandson of Ozzie and Harriet. I'd like to ask you a personal question, if I could, about where you were or how you found out about your father's passing. I mean, to me, it seems like there was a lot less mediums, and your father, being as famous as he was, I have these visions of you finding out from a news anchor as opposed to the traditional ways. And back in the 80s, I think that would probably be a little bit unusual. Could you maybe talk to me a little bit about that?
Well, let's just say this. I found out about it on the car radio. And
okay.
I was actually supposed to be on the plane with my brother. And,
oh, wow.
we were living with my dad. I was 18 years old. So we knew each other very well. And I was, yet another question. I was extremely aware of his career. Mm-hmm. And I knew all about the songs, who wrote what. I'm pretty much a walking dictionary of what he did. But more importantly, he was just a great guy. And it was New Year's Eve, and for whatever reason, he told us if we wanted to go with him or whatever, that we'd probably have to meet him in Dallas. He had a couple of smaller shows to play, and he was going to meet us there on his private plane. And we just decided that we would wait for him to get back, because the whole point was to spend time with him. And I just kind of get a feeling now that he knew something was going to go on, but I was in the car, and they were playing a couple of his songs, and I never put it together. I just thought, wow, I can't believe the local rock station is playing some of my dad's stuff. It wasn't the oldies station. And the disc jockey came on after the last tones of Garden Party, and he was choked up, and he said, this has been a tribute to Rick Nelson, who was killed today along with his entire band in a plane crash in Dallas. And I was with a girl at the time, and she grabbed me and said, "It can't be true." And all I remember was running out of the car and passing out. And the thing is, I call it now like it's a football game. I can't really think about anything more horrible than experiencing something like that. My brother found out, yes, from a news anchor. And it's been a love-hate relationship with the media ever since. I mean, we understand it's a necessary evil that we have to deal with, but for whatever reason, they didn't give us the not only the benefit of letting us know through discrete channels, but after he passed away, they were completely unfair to him. And there were so many things that came up about what caused the plane crash. And unfortunately, since there was a settlement with the aircraft company that improperly maintained the plane and caused the crash, we couldn't say anything as a family. It was part of the settlement. And so he took a lot of lumps that he didn't need to take. The NTSB report came out, of course, saying what happened, which is a gasoline heater caught on fire mid-flight. And the media didn't really want to cover that because it wasn't as salacious as, what they were reporting. So, here we are 25 years after his passing, and it still feels fresh to me. It's like I say in the show, I still feel like he's out on the road, and I'm waiting for him to come home.
To kind of expand on what you said a little bit about how the media handled it afterwards with the love-hate relationship. As a child, I remember, and I don't remember which news anchor it was, but they kind of put their fist down and said that I won't have it. I know this man. He's a good man. And I won't continue on with this. Did you ever hear about that, or did you know that?
I actually was watching it. I watched it, and I believe it was Dan Rather. It was amazing. I was there. I was watching it happen. This is after 2.5 weeks of him just getting creamed in the media. And Dan Rather, I believe it was, put his fist down and said, "I won't be a part of this. This is irresponsible journalism. It's not fair to him or his family, and I'm just not going to besmirch his name because it's not right." And I have never to this day ever seen anybody take a stand for a celebrity like that.
I have not either.
And I was so impressed with it, and it kind of said it, because it's kind of like now, here I am years later, and I still meet people that come up saying that my dad was about the nicest guy they've ever met. And hopefully that's the legacy I'll leave behind. I think it's much more important even than his music. He was just a great guy.
Matthew Nelson, thank you very much for your time. This has been a real treat. Matthew Nelson, an entertainment iconic family member, Guinness Book record holder for the only family in entertainment history of 3 generations of hit makers. Matthew, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Super Talk. Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
All right, let's head over to the Zoom line here. Look pretty chilly here today. It's below freezing. We didn't get any snow, but dip below freezing up here in the Midwest. Warren Martin, you're down in Kansas. What's the weather like down there? Have you started the propane stove yet?
Well, I'm telling you right now, I decided a long time ago, being a New Mexican desert boy, growing up, when I started moving and changing for jobs, I got up here to Kansas and realized that about an hour north of me is where they have gates on the interstate, where they close the gates on the interstate for snowstorms. And I decided that was my extent. I'm not going any further north. If you have gates that close the roads because of winter weather, it's too far north for me. So we have been mild. We've been in the 60s, and we'll be in the 60s most of this week. And so it's been a good week for us.
Public relations can come in the form of good, can come in the form of bad. I'm very curious about the new Paramount Plus series that's going to be debuting on November 17th, starring Billy Bob Thornton, Demi Moore, Andy Garcia, John Hamm. I mean, this has got the makings of a major series, much like Fargo, much like I'm trying to think, Sopranos. I mean, that's where this is in the same level of. So I'd like to be able to do like a 10-part review series with you, if you wouldn't mind, when we can, we'll do one series a day or one series every 3 days, or we'll figure out the schedule. We'll print the schedule out on the internet so people know ahead of time if they want to do a watch party and follow along, which a lot of people like to do. And but I don't know about you, Warren, but I can't do all 10 episodes in one night. I just can't do. In fact, I think it's the first 2 come out the first week, and then it's weekly after that. So we'll just do it every week. But what's a landman in the world of oil and gas? I think this is going to be interesting because a landman is a very basic role player, but a very instrumental position in the whole oil and gas process. Talk to me about, your relationship with landmen, what you view a landman, describe them a little bit out there for the listening audience who might not even be familiar with what a landman is.
Yeah, I think that this series has me both on edge, scared to death, and hopeful all at the same time, because they have centered in on a key ingredient that is often overlooked in the oil and gas industry, but an ingredient that has probably the biggest role in shaping people's view of the oil and gas industry. It's no secret that the oil and gas industry in the United States and vast portions of the United States revolves around the relationship between the oil producer and the landowner. That's where really the rubber meets the road, and where conflict begins or conflict ends is in that relationship where you have two people that are sharing a property, hopefully for a common benefit to both parties. But that's where issues can really arise. And that's what this show is going to emphasize on. But what that means is that a landman is much like a real estate agent, and that real estate agent that's going to show you the new house that you're going to buy. They take you through, they show you the whole house, they show you all the perks of the house, they give you the best qualities of it. But unlike a real estate agent, when the landman goes in and they walk through the entire process, once you sign the contract, they don't walk away like a real estate agent does. The real estate agent walks away, they're done. The landman is there for the life of the lease. And really the landman, in many regards, is the face of the industry to the public. That's the person in the company that negotiates and works with the people that are on the ground, that are on the public side of that interest. And so on the one hand, there are a lot of the vast majority of landmen that are incredibly great individuals, that are gifted, that have a desire to produce a win-win situation that's beneficial to all parties involved, because they know that the longevity of their relationship is dependent upon that relationship. But we do have a few bad apples, like in every other industry, that's in it just for the money. And they tend to go in and they inflate, they amplify, they lie, they do different things. So where this show goes is really going to be interesting to see on how much it is realistic and how much of it is taking from those negative stories versus how much it's taken from those positive stories. But overall, the oil and gas industry wouldn't be anywhere where it is today if the vast majority of those relationships weren't great, good relationships that benefited both parties. Most farmers and ranchers that are here in Kansas and across the Midwest are highly dependent upon the oil and gas industry to keep their operations going through lean times and lean years. And so it is a win-win situation. But that landman position is really key, because they really are the public face of the oil and gas industry to the public when it comes to putting money on the table. And that's the most serious time. That's when you make the hardest feelings against you or the best feelings towards you, is right there sitting at that kitchen table. And that's where that landman comes in. And so they negotiate the lease, they negotiate the operations, and then the oil company comes in and does the development, and the landman continues to develop that relationship through the entirety of that lease. So it is a crucial role, and it is a very significant and influential role that we take very seriously in the industry. I regularly speak at landman association meetings, where it's groups of landmen that are getting together, and the landmen can be both men and women, by the way, but they get together and hone their skills and develop their skills and learn ethics and learn those different things. I regularly talk to those groups. I recently, just last month, had an article published in Landman, the national magazine, for their association of workers that work in that part of our industry. And so, I have a huge respect for landmen across the entire United States. And I believe that they are critical to the image that the oil and gas industry has here in the United States with property owners. And so that's why I have a little bit of fear about this series coming up. I have a little bit of hope about this series coming up. But my main goal is I hope it stays true to what's actually happening in the oil and gas industry, because what's happening in the oil and gas industry by far is beneficial to all parties involved and is a win-win for all parties involved, with just a few exceptions.
Well, we appreciate the time today and look forward to what we got coming down the pipe. And what's the best place for people to find you?
Best place to find us is at kansasstrong.com. If you go to kansasstrong.com, you can find about jobs that are available here in Kansas. You can find about all of our campaigns, what we're doing. Go to our staff page, and you can find connections to me and connect with me directly.
Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Welcome back to Super Talk 1270's Talk of the Town. My name is Jason Spees, sitting in for Steve Bach, and we're going to go right to our next interview. Forged and Fire champion, Cody Adolphson.
Here we are, folks, live and local at the Little Wolf Iron Works, I guess, forging center.
Forge shop.
Mic up to the mouth when we talk.
Forge shop. Anything you want to call it.
Cody Adolphson is our special guest here. He is the champion, the 2022 champion for History Channel's Forged in Fire. Now, the way I've been describing it to people, and you're going to describe it next, so get ready for your description of what Forged in Fire is. I say it's kind of like Survivor meets American Idol, but with swords and knives and daggers and really cool stuff.
Kinda. I like the fact that you need a skill on the show in order to compete.
Well, like Chopped, where you got to actually have a little bit of a skill and a craft and a trade.
Yeah, exactly. It's a timed competition between 4 bladesmiths to build what they want you to build and see if you have what it takes. And my episode was season 9, episode 6, so I'm just that episode's champion.
Oh, that episode's champion. Okay,
right, there's multiple champions.
Oh, it is like Chopped then.
Yep.
Okay, every episode is a different champion. Yep. Okay, and you got some prize money?
Yeah, I got $10,000.
Nice. Okay, so and the idea is either to go take a vacation or invest it in your business, right?
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Something like that.
So let's talk about just the whole craft and the trade and the skill of foraging, welding, working with fire. Let's talk with foraging. Is this blacksmith? Is this what this is?
Yeah, it's blacksmithing, bladesmithing. Okay. It's the same thing they used to do when they used to forge weapons for, throughout time.
Okay, so bladesmithing, blacksmithing. Is there any other type of words that we might know about? Fire starter, firesmithing?
No, it's mostly just bladesmithing, right. Blacksmithing.
So walk me through the process here about how a knife is made, because what I'm looking at here right now, folks, and we'll have the pictures available at thecrudelife.com as well as supertalk1270am.com or links to that. It starts out actually in an artist's sketchbook with a pencil, and it looks like somebody would be drawing a painting or a portrait of a person, a sketch artist. But this is of a knife. Walk me through how this starts.
So I see knives, social media, anywhere in life, at Scheels or anywhere. Get an idea for my own shape and I draw it up. But I'm really into Damascus, so the way a blade really starts with me is I actually forge out layered steel, which is Damascus steel.
No, I'm not familiar with the word Damascus. Go on with that.
So Damascus is 2 types of different layered steel, where when you forge it out, depending on how you manipulate the metal and how many layers you have of the steel, the pattern changes in the steel.
What would be the other word besides Damascus that's used? Steel?
Layered steel.
Pattern
steel.
Okay, pattern steel.
But it's mostly Damascus steel. And so then after you make your knife and you clean it up and you dip it into a acid etch, then your actual pattern shows after that forging process.
I see. Now I'm understanding what you're talking about. So that's where the artistic part really takes a new level.
Right. You can do pretty much anything with steel. I mean, there's people that put pictures in steel. I mean, it's crazy.
How does that happen?
So there's a whole nother process of putting in...
Is it laser?
No. So what they do is they take nickel and then they shape it into what picture they want, and they put it into a canister, Damascus canister, and people that have seen the show will understand what I'm saying. And they actually put that into the steel, and then they'll tile it and forge weld it back together again, and it'll actually repeat down the blade.
So I can take my family picture.
Well, to an extent.
Okay.
a two-dimensional silhouetted shape
I see.
type of deal. You can do basic pictures of it. It's crazy. People have put their names in steel. It's endless. The possibilities are absolutely endless with steel.
Does that take a lot of time then compared to just a traditional knife?
Yeah, I mean, you can forge out a traditional knife, get it forged to shape in a couple hours, and heat treat it and temper it. I mean, you can get it done in a few hours, obviously.
It takes longer than that with the
Damascus. There are some steels that I've made that I've had 12 hours of forging alone into the steel before I even make the knife.
Okay.
So I mean, it's a time-consuming. Patience is a big part of this.
I don't see an anvil around here. Oh, there it is. Okay. Woo!
I have.
I was gonna say
three.
You have
4.
3 anvils. Okay.
Four. That one's holding up a box.
I thought that was the box holder. Okay, no, that's another anvil.
That's a 100-year-old anvil.
Do you get a bang on the iron, or do you have one of those machines that does most of that? Or?
I just bought a Big Blue with my prize money.
Big Blue.
It's a power hammer. It's a 110-pound power hammer.
Okay.
Air actuated.
And how does that work then? The Blue Max 110.
So it's powered by air, and it brings up your hammer, and then it hits a sensor and it drops it.
And that
it's
would be the Magnaforce air compressor over there?
Yeah, ran by the air compressor, and then I have a press which is electric, and that's hydraulic controlled.
Okay.
So, and then I swing the hammer just as much as using these machines sometimes.
So what is the other one's called the Coal Iron Works? Is that the name of the machine?
Yep, that's my forging press. It's a 16-ton forging press.
And that just looks like what it forges the layers together? Is that what it does?
Squishes it.
Squishes it.
Yep,
okay.
16 tons has squishing power on it, and then the other one just hammers it out, speeds up my drawing out process.
I bet I could fit my arm in there.
Oh yeah, with that set of dies, that's my set of flat dies for after I heat treat or straightening out a billet. So depending on what dies I have in my machine is what it does to the steel.
Okay. Boy, this is some interesting things. Now, we're taking a look at the fire portion here. Now, how hot does this fire get? Does this flame get in the oven?
Like it's up to 3,000 degrees.
3,000 degrees?
Yep.
You ever cook in there? Have you ever put a hot dog in there just to see what happens?
I've turned off the forge for about 20 minutes and flash cooked a hot dog.
Are you for real?
Yeah.
Okay, s'mores? No?
No
okay.
s'mores.
Just melt that thing right
off.
off.
It's crazy how hot it gets in there. The steel gets so hot you can barely look at it.
Okay. How did you get into the show, by the way?
So, growing up in North Dakota, I've been around hunting. Always carried a knife. I always wanted to get into making knives, and then I'm a welder by trade, so been around metal my whole life. And so I saw the show come on, and I started getting into it more and more and more, and I finally made the decision in January of 2020 to pursue it and actually learn how to make knives. So I got a hold of now one of my best friends, who I followed him on Instagram, and he's actually a 2-time Forged and Fire champion. And went and took a class with him out in Wisconsin, and then I just fell in love. I made my first Damascus knife, and I was hooked.
2-time forging champion?
Yeah, he's 2-time Forged and Fire champion.
Okay, and then you guys became buddies, and now does he treat you different now that you're a champ?
No, we treat each other pretty much the same.
Cody Adolphson, hold that thought. We're going to take a brief pause. We come back more on Super Talk 1270's Talk of the Town.
Talk 1270. Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Welcome back here live in the studio at the Little Wolf Ironworks Industrial Shop here in Bismarck, North Dakota. Jason Spees here with Super Talk 1270. Cody Adolphson is the champion of Season 9, Episode 6. The champion of the Forged in Fire on the History Channel. He made a sword for the championship round, a couple knives leading up to it. And when we teased at the break, we wanted to find out how he can apply this into the real world. He won some good prize money. He invested in the Blue Max 110, which I imagine some people know what that is. I don't.
It's Big Blue. It's the power hammer on the show, actually.
The Big Blue. There you go.
Blue.
It's the Big Blue. Not to be confused with Big Boy. Just get in line. It moves fast. You ever go to Big Boy?
All the time.
Get the Hawaiian flying style? All right. That's what I call it. Okay, so you've got the Little Wolf Ironworks. What is it that you do with Little Wolf Ironworks? How can you apply this out into the real world?
So I I make custom knives. People order a knife. They kind of pick what kind of steel, whether Damascus, mono steel. They can pick handle material, and I make them a knife. And
Okay.
I make them a handed down heirloom that they can hand down for generation to generation.
And this is a forever knife. I was explaining it to my son. I said, it's one of those knives that, you give your grandchildren, and if they lose it 10,000 years from now, somebody finds it and it still works.
I'd hope so. That's my goal.
But it is like one of those forever knives.
It is. Yeah, that's my goal, where somebody buys a knife for me, they can hand it down generation to generation and, make it a special thing.
I can see a lot of, family names and family crests and just, some things that can be really put into there. I was noticing in your, was that a Snap-on Tools? What is that?
It's just some type of a toolbox.
Toolbox. Was antlers, so you could even do antlers.
Yeah, antler.
Sort of
I've made handles with meteorite, mammoth tusk.
Meteorite? Where'd
Yeah.
you get that?
I know a guy.
Oh, okay. Well, I might
No,
be
it's actually from the largest meteorite formation in the world. It's the Campo del Cilio meteorite in Argentina.
Okay. And I suppose you can just buy that offline or something.
Oh
like
yeah,
that?
you just got to know who to talk to.
Just got to go to the right dark website. Holy smokes, I'm holding it here. I've wondered about that because a lot of iron, right?
Iron and nickel.
Iron and nickel and meteorites. Yeah, they say a lot of meteorites are high in iron and nickel. I couldn't remember nickel, but I remember the iron part of it. In fact, a lot of the ancients, that was sacred if you made a knife out of meteorite.
Yeah, you can forge it into a knife.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. So, okay. How about anything else? Are you going to do anything else with the Blue Max, or is it just for knives? Can you do?
You can do ornamental blacksmithing with it. I mean, you
Okay.
can do quite a bit with them.
Do you see yourself being one of those artists that sell, the twisted wrought iron and all that different stuff?
I had a lady ask me one time how much I'd charge per foot of ornamental blacksmith hand railing, and I threw her some outrageous number, and she said, "Oh, that's not bad." And I just kind of stood back and was kind of like,
Let me rework those numbers.
So I could ask for more.
But that shows you there's a market out there.
Oh, yeah. It's. Okay. I mean, it's a trade. It's just like any other trade, and somebody has to do it.
And how much of this is like welding? Because you are a welder by trade, right?
Yep, by trade I'm a welder. I have my own welding truck.
And
I'm a rig welder.
did you go to trade school for that, or just kind of learn on the fly? And
No,
certified?
my college is what you're standing in. This is where I learned how to weld too. My dad was a welder too, so I'm second generation welder.
All right, so then talk to me about that. You're over at the Marathon Refinery.
Yeah, I work for a contractor over at the refinery.
Okay.
So I started this when I was 18, jumped in a welding truck and went to work. So
when did you start out in the oil field? Because you were out there for a while, weren't you?
I started here at the refinery with Westcon.
Okay.
Local company
sure.
that started. Yep. So I started with them. Dad worked for them for years, and then I kind of traveled around with them for a while. Built the refinery in Dickinson and worked up in Watford and here and there,
Mm-hmm.
And then just kind of came back to the refinery every so often when there was a job here, and since I was local, they didn't have to pay me for travel pay.
Yeah, I suppose not.
Yeah, so
saves on the hotel, $300 a night.
Right, I just shacked up at mom and dad's here and went to work and cashed all the money.
Right, yeah. You can negotiate a good per diem that way.
Yeah, so I've done that for the last 11 years, and then knife making kind of got my eye, and one day I'd like to go full time. That's the goal.
Are you seeing more of the welding opportunities open? Because there's been a big push for people to get into welding in the last 10 years. And so that's why I was wondering, you're wanting to go more towards the artistic, passionate, custom high-end route, which I think is great.
Yeah.
But I'm also wondering on the welding side, is that really picking up or what?
Yeah, I mean, we're losing skilled trades like crazy.
There's something like an 85% retirement rate. I think that's over, actually. I think they're gone, actually.
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, honestly, you work out there every day. You just see the work ethic. You see, back when I first started, it's completely different from what it is now. You're not getting the same quality of hands on your jobs, and people are just there for a paycheck. They don't do this there's no pride in it anymore.
The other part I wondered about is, when I'm in my mid-40s, and when I went into the workplace, they said that I will probably have 3 to 7 jobs throughout my career. But they said throughout my career, meaning I'd probably work in the media as a writer or talk show or something within that vein. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Nowadays, they tell people that you're going to have like 15 jobs. Every 2 years, expect a new job type of a thing. Are people leaving welding then when they go there? I mean, what's going on with that?
I have no idea. I mean, you're out in the oil field. Yeah, you're going to have 15 different jobs you end up on in a year, 2 years. You know how it is.
Yeah, and that's I mean, a lot of people try to stay in there if they can, but of course, if it's down, they got to go do something else.
Yep. This job ends, you go to the next one. This pipeline ends, you go to the next one. It's just
yours has to seem a little bit like a lateral move, though. I mean, welding and forging metal seems pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, I picked up welding really quick and easy when I was younger. I've been around it since I think I welded the first time when I was 6 years old.
Oh wow.
Like I said, my dad's been doing it since
that was the other thing I was bringing up about the different trades and stuff, is that a lot of welders and pipe fitters and electricians, that's their job for life. And that's where I'm wondering if I don't think a lot of the younger people are looking at it like that,
No, honestly, like I said, it's scary. We're losing our skilled trades like crazy.
Right.
There's not going to be enough people to do what needs to be done.
They'll do it for 5 years, make good money, and then
do something else.
Go, I don't know, work at Walmart.
I mean, if I do go full time, I'll still do welding on the side. I mean, I'll always have a welding business. It's something to do around here, and people are begging for it around here.
Second generation, you know a few people as well.
Yeah, one or two.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about these knives then. If someone were to buy them, let's get some knives sold for you here, see if we can't do that somehow. So how does somebody buy a knife? I mean, do they just call you up? Do they send you a sketch? Do they text you? What?
So I post all my knives that I build on social media, my Instagram or my Facebook. And usually the way it works is someone sees a knife that I finish and they say, oh, I love this, I would like something like this. Then I would say, well, this particular knife is going to cost X amount of dollars. And then sometimes that's too much for them. Sometimes they go with it. And then I offer to go to a mono steel compared to Damascus or whatever the knife I posted was. So get a hold of me on social media. My number is on my Facebook. You can text me, you can call me, we can get something set up and I actually work through you and you design your knife with me to make it yours.
Talk of the Town, weekday mornings starting at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app.